Welcome to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast for farmers and ag professionals by the Iowa Farm Bureau, bringing you the news, experts, and educational insights that matter most. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our July 11th edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and today's episode features an interview with Mike Telford, who's the Executive Director of the Iowa Farm Animal Care Coalition. We know that fewer and fewer Iowans have a direct connection to farming these days, which means that they have more questions about how farmers are providing our food and caring for their animals, especially in the midst of Iowa's hottest and coldest months. So Mike's here to talk about the insights and answers the Iowa Farm Animal Care Coalition offers to non-farmers, as well as the services they offer livestock farmers who could use some assistance. Spokesman reporter Corey Munson sat down with Mike earlier this summer.
Today I'm joined by Mike Telford, Executive Director of the Iowa Farm Animal Care Coalition. Mike, can we start off by kind of having you remind us what it is IFAC does? Kind of what's your mission?
Iowa Farm Animal Care was created 10 years ago, and we're there from a standpoint of vision that every Iowa farm animal receives proper animal care. But more specifically on our mission, we're there to promote responsible and humane farm animal care. We provide voluntary, independent, professional evaluations in some cases. We want to increase awareness on how Iowans care for their animals. But more than anything else, we want to provide information and resources on the latest in animal care and how producers actually produce animals.
Now, farmers know, and I think we know from just walking outside, that every season comes with its own set of challenges. During the summer months, what are some of the issues that you're addressing with livestock producers?
The challenges change completely from February to July. And in February, of course, we're dealing with extremely cold temperatures, wind chills, and then this time of year, obviously, we have heat indexes. You know, we've already had some temperatures that are already above 90, 95. But we've also seen some temperatures that have come close to 100. And that's going to put the heat index above 100 degrees, which is going to change us from the alert category to obviously the danger or emergency categories, depending on your location. It's interesting, Corey, that poultry and swine are probably more susceptible than cattle to the high temperatures. But most of the poultry and the hogs are in climate-controlled buildings. So that's really why we never hear about it with those particular species. Cattle, obviously, are outside, and they're where people can see them. But cattle are more resistant to heat of all the species. But obviously, additional care is needed during the days ahead, because we're going to see warmer temperatures from now through August.
So those guys who do have cattle out in the pasture or in lots, what are some of the advice that you give for them during the summertime?
Well, the main thing this time of year when it's hot is water, water, water. And you want to make sure those animals have lots of clean, fresh, cool, and abundant water. The second thing is nutrition. And sometimes the public may not understand, but animals will eat very late in the day or very early in the morning, and if a pasture isn't in good shape, those professional producers are going to make sure they have high quality hay or maybe even a little bit of a ration because of the heat, because those animals have to have nutrition during this hot weather. Obviously, shade, shelter, and ventilation can help bring down heat stress, and there's a lot of producers that will throw those added things in when the temperature gets hot. But low stress means good health. So that means that if you're transporting animals, you want to do that early in the morning or you want to do it late at night, but you don't want to do it certainly in the heat of the day, because that's when those animals are going to feel more stress from the heat. Professional livestock producers do a great job, and honestly, they have prepared for warm days, just like they prepare for those cold temperatures. I should add that Iowa is very fortunate in that even though we have warm days, we are blessed to have cool evenings. And so with these temperatures, we're still going to get down into the upper 60s or the lower 70s overnight. And that gives animals time to drink, eat, and rest and really get their body temperature back down. The critical time to watch, if you're out driving around, or if you're a producer, they already know this, but the critical time is from early afternoon to early evening, when that heat temperature and the heat indexes are really high.
On a public perspective, during the summer months, or really any time of the year, what are some of the most common questions or concerns that you get phone calls on?
Obviously, this time of year, somebody may see cattle that are out and they'll say, are those animals in distress? And we'll talk about the situation, but generally, if there's water available, they're not going to be suffering like some people might think. But in Iowa, again, we've got a great opportunity here because of the climate and all of the feedstuffs and the pastures that we have available.
Well, it sounds like this gives you opportunities to really be an education resource, which is wonderful for helping folks understand what Iowa farmers do every day for caring for their animals. And
this time of year, Corey, I encourage people when they call and they have questions about animals. We're coming into a period of the time of the year here where you've got a great opportunity to learn about livestock production if you don't know much about it. And it's as close as your county fair or attending the Iowa State Fair. And it's a great time, if you're a member of the general public, to go to a county fair or to the state fair and go through the livestock barns and visit with producers about their animals, how they care for them, what they do, and a lot of the animal science techniques that they apply. Because at the state fair and the county fair, they're doing it all.
So let's say somebody gets a hold of you and it's a farmer.
Right.
What's going to happen in that interaction?
Well, the first thing that's most important is we don't take any anonymous callers.
Okay.
But the second thing I have to tell you is when somebody calls me, the first thing I inform them of is we're going to take your information, but it is confidential. No one's going to know who called me. And we do that because we want people to feel free to call. It depends on really what the phone call's about. Most of the time it's a question on, I saw a calf out in the middle of this pasture and it looked like it was in a pen. Well, it turns out that that's a very expensive mobile calf feeder. And he wasn't in a pen, he was in there eating. We run into some of the weather-related situations. I remember a couple of years ago we had some floods out in western Iowa. We had some cattle that were on an island. So we were working with the authorities to make sure that was addressed. And so we get phone calls on just about every aspect of animal production. And like I say, I love to talk to the public, and I encourage people to either send us an email or questions through the website, or just call us at the 800 number. It's toll free.
You don't even have to necessarily be in a crisis situation for someone to call you and ask questions.
I like to say, like the Department of Transportation, if you see something, say something. Because if you've got a question and it's easy to answer, it's easy to answer. If it's a concern, we want to make sure that it gets addressed. And like I say, things happen. People can have mental issues. People can have physical issues, and all of a sudden they can't get out there. If you have a concern like that, call us, because then we can go to work, in working with those producers and local authorities on making sure that the situation is addressed.
When somebody contacts you then, is there a cost to the farmer for any of these services?
We don't charge for any of our services. So if you've got a general question about production and you're just a member of the public, feel free to call us. There's no charge. If you're a producer and you got a concern about your neighbor, please call. If I happen to call you as a producer and offer our services, the first thing I say is, we want to help you and we will pay for this. And so there's no cost to any aspect of our program.
That just seems like an amazing resource, and it's one I hope folks can get more familiar with and know that's available to them.
I think it's impressive that the livestock industry in this state is so successful and is so concerned that they want to make sure that the service is delivered, because they don't want their neighbor in trouble any more than their neighbor wants their neighbor in trouble. And that's the reason I say, Corey, if you see something, say something, feel free to call us with questions. And I don't care if it's hot or it's cold or it's rainy, or it's nice out. But we want to make sure that you know what's going on, and we want to give transparency to animal production because it's important that as all of us consumers know how our food is produced.
So I know that you've got many different organizations that you work with that interface directly for these expertise. Can you kind of tell me what are a few of those organizations?
Well, the main driver for Iowa Farm Animal Care is our advisory committee. And we have a great advisory committee. And on that committee is the Secretary of Agriculture. We work very closely with the state veterinarian, Dr. Jeff Kysand, and also Dr. Troy Brick, who's the assistant state veterinarian. We work very closely with the Iowa Veterinary Medical Association. We also work very closely with the Iowa Sheriffs and Deputies Association because sometimes they're the first ones to get calls. We work with the Animal Rescue League in Iowa. The ARL sends us their cases that deal with livestock and farm animals, and when we take calls for companion animals, which include horses, dogs, and cats, we take that information and then refer it to them. We work very closely with the Iowa Department of Transportation in regards to not only the general transportation of animals, but also the concerns where we have maybe truck drivers that have issues on the road. The mainstays of our program come from the Iowa State University veterinary medical staff up there, and that includes not just the animal health side, but also the animal welfare representatives on campus. So Dr. Suzanne Millman, who heads that up, does a tremendous job. We also work very closely with the ISU Animal Science Department, which of course is the crew that educates all the kids on animal production. And we work very closely with Dr. Anna Johnson. We have all the expertise in the advisory committee to help guide our program and also to help refer information to if they're needed.
And so with those questions, how do folks get a hold of you?
Well, I tell you what, I always tell people if you can just remember Iowa Farm Animal Care. And if you go to any of the search engines and put that in, our contact information will come up. But for more direct than that, our website is iowafarmanimalcare.org. You can go online there. We've got a lot of resources on our website. And I hope that people will, take a look at the information that's there. They can also send us an email, or if they have a concerned citizen report, just fill out the form and send it to us. And again, I'm really the only one that sees that information. And I log it as a general question. I never reveal who called, but we also do not take anonymous reports. The other way to contact us is toll free, and the number, which is again on the website, is 1-800-252-0577.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to know that IFAC is there ready to help. If you're a livestock farmer who's experiencing hardship, or you know someone who is, remember that you can always call the Iowa Farm Animal Care Coalition for assistance or answers to your animal care questions. Their phone number is 1-800-252-0577, and their website is iowafarmanimalcare.org. Of course, the heat of summer always brings with it concerns about how we can keep ourselves and our animals cool. Unfortunately, this year we're also looking at the possibility of short power outages if the demand for energy exceeds capacity in the heat of July and August. We actually ran a story about this topic in a recent edition of the Spokesman newspaper, where we interviewed an expert from ISU Extension asking his advice for farmers who face the potential of short electrical outages. We've linked that article in the notes for this podcast, so you can check out the whole thing there. But the advice is pretty straightforward. First, secure backup power generation, make sure your generator is in good working condition, and make sure you have fuel on hand to run that generator. Second, review your livestock barn ventilation, feeding and watering plans should an electrical outage occur. Third, touch base with your electricity provider to stay posted on the latest updates. Again, that full Spokesman article on preparing for potential summer power outages can be found in the notes for this podcast episode. That's all for this episode of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for our next one on July 25th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.